Daniel Benjamin is the director of the John Sloan Dickey Center at Dartmouth and former ambassador at large and coordinator for counterterrorism at the State Department. He joins me now via Skype from Hanover, New Hampshire, and he has written a new piece for Politico magazine questioning whether the president is actually fighting terrorism. Daniel, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
The president used divisive language on the campaign trail, saying things like Islam hates us. While he may have softened some of that language when speaking to Muslim leaders in the Middle East last month, what effect do you think that kind of rhetoric has in the fight against extremism?
Well, it has negative impact. It plays to the president's base, but it doesn't do anything to reassure Muslim communities within the United States upon whom we rely for intelligence that will help us identify people who are radicalizing and who may be a threat to the United States. It also sends a terrible message to our partners around the world with whom we work very closely to thwart terrorist plots and to unravel networks and the like.
Would you go so far as to say that kind of rhetoric makes the country less safe?
I absolutely believe it makes us less safe. Anything that alienates Muslim communities, that may contribute to radicalization, that plays into the narrative of our terrorist enemies, all those things make us less safe. And as has often been noted, the president has become a very effective tool for recruitment for ISIS and other extremist organizations, and that's certainly not in our interest.
As part of the president's international trip last month, he visited the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and in your piece you write this, quote, "The U.S. would be much better served by a regional initiative to reduce Saudi-Iranian tensions, not to stoke them." During that trip, we heard some very tough rhetoric from President Trump against Iran. Explain what you mean here by saying the U.S. would be much better served by a regional initiative to reduce Saudi-Iranian tensions.
Well, one of the really important distinguishing characteristics of the Middle East for the last 10, 15 years has been sectarian tension. Saudi Arabia and Iran are the two great powers in the region, and they have used anti-Shia and anti-Sunni sentiments to mobilize people. And certainly a big part of the reason that so many people traveled to Iraq and Syria to fight ISIS was, and to fight the Syrian regime even more so, was because of their desire to take revenge against those who were seen as having killed Sunni Muslims in Syria. And my point simply is that the sectarianism is one of the big, powerful draws, one of the pulls that brings people into the radical fold. And what we need is less sectarianism and more of a reduction of tension. And that would certainly serve our interests much better. You know, people become radicalized through some of this sectarian hostility, and they come out and they're prepared to attack either Shia or Sunni Muslims who aren't viewed as being allies, or the West, and that's not good.
How would you characterize the president's counterterrorism efforts compared to past administrations?
Well, so the first thing to note is that an awful lot of what is going on is a continuation of past efforts. The campaign in Iraq and Syria against ISIS is a direct continuation of the campaign that was being conducted by the Obama administration, and that is important. The basic nuts and bolts work that the FBI, the CIA, other parts of the intelligence community, all that they do, that is also a continuation. What has changed, I think, is the lining up behind the Sunnis in the Middle East in a totally unambiguous way that leaves no margin of playroom, so that we can be between, so that we can exercise some restraint on what's going on in the region. And of course, then there's the travel ban, which has also really alienated Muslim Americans and Muslims around the world. The one other thing to note is that this is an administration that has already signaled that it's not interested in doing anything having to do with development. And that is, I think, a very bad sign, because over the long term, it's only by reducing some of the drivers of radicalization, the poverty, the lack of access to education, the chaos in the region, and really the bad governance, that we're going to see a large-scale reduction in recruitment.
To follow up on that point, you write that the president is unwittingly, quote, setting the stage for major growth in the population of people who would like to kill us. What changes, Daniel, do you think need to be made in Washington to fix that?
Right. Well, again, I think, one, there needs to be a course correction on our foreign policy towards the Middle East and towards the Gulf. I think we shouldn't be embracing autocrats who repress their people. That's also really bad for business. That's going to lead to more radicalization. And I think there has to be a recognition that it's long-term investment in some of these fragile and broken societies, the Somalias, the Yemens, and the like, that's really going to dial back radicalization. By supporting, for example, Saudi Arabia in its efforts in Yemen, its a war in Yemen, we're also creating more chaos. War creates more extremists, and over the long term, this is just really bad play.
All right, Daniel Benjamin, Mr. Ambassador, thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.